Good evening. It's way past time to begin. It's now 6:58, and we are ready to call the regular meeting of the Victoria City Council to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda tonight is announcements. The City Council will hold a workshop on Monday, May 10th at 5 p.m. to discuss our swimming pool fencing ordinance. Additionally, Sheriff Camerood will join us to discuss ways the City and Sheriff's Office can strengthen its partnership. On Monday, June 14th, we'll kick off the city's annual budget process. The City Council will be discussing its preliminary 2022 budget during a workshop that evening at 5 p.m. All City Council meetings are open to the public and held in the City Council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we encourage anyone wanting to attend our council meetings or workshops in person to contact our city clerk in advance so we can ensure proper physical distancing. Next on the agenda is our open forum. Is there anyone in council chambers tonight that would like to address council on an item that is not on the agenda this evening or scheduled to be coming to the council at a future date? Seeing no one, we'll move on with our agenda. Our next order of business is to adopt the final agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Excuse me, I didn't catch who made the motion.
Derek.
Derek.
Okay.
Okay. And who seconded? Okay, got it. The next item is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine, administrative, and do not require deliberation or are housekeeping items required by law. Consent agenda items are approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, is there anything from staff that wishes to come for a separate discussion?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
All right, members of the council, any members of the council wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? Anyone in the audience that would like to have a separate discussion on an item? Seeing none, may I have a vote to adopt, or a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now moving on to our regular agenda. The first item on the agenda, 6.1, sketch plat review for the Meadows at Victoria. Presenting this evening virtually is Community and Economic Development Director Marty Dahl. Marty, we see you. Welcome.
Hey, Marty.
The floor is yours. We can't hear you, however.
We need your speaker on.
Here comes Alyssa. Hold on one second, Marty.
We have Alyssa springing into action.
Marty, do you want to try speaking?
Marty, can we try, let's see if we can hear you now. Marty
Marty,
can't,
do you want to try speaking?
you can't.
Still not.
Me, I'm wanting to touch the screen.
Now try.
Marty? No.
Check his microphone.
Check your mic.
His mic is good. He's not muted.
Marty, I don't know if it's an our end because the volume is coming out of the computer speakers. If that makes sense.
You want to switch to Paul and see if he can. Hey, Paul, I think you're on there. If you want to unmute yourself and see if we can hear you. Mic
One,
test.
two. Can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can hear.
There we
Yes,
go.
we can.
Test 1, 2.
Yeah, Marty, we can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
And please proceed.
Excellent. All right. I apologize for that. I think I figured out the issue with my microphone. So sorry for the additional delay.
Can we turn it down just a bit? All right, very good, Marty. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Thank you. I was attempting to say thank you for allowing the flexibility for me to do this. I feel a little under the weather, and I thought that folks in the council chambers would appreciate me not hacking and coughing through all of these presentations. Although with the technical difficulties, maybe that was the lesser of the two evils. So at any rate, thank you for the flexibility. So yes, we are here to talk about a sketch plat for the Meadows at Victoria, or as you may have also seen identified in your council packet as Rolling Hills South. Just as a reminder, this is the sketch plat process. There are no approvals or actions to be taken during the meeting. It really is just a process to provide guidance and assist the applicant in any subsequent preliminary plat applications. There was a neighborhood meeting notified the evening of the Planning Commission on April 20th for property owners within 350 feet. There was one participant in that meeting from Twin Cities and Western Railroad, and I have incorporated their feedback into your background packet and into the presentation this evening. So the area that we are discussing this evening is located in the city's south growth area, currently within Laketown Township, which would require annexation. The property is addressed as 10580 Victoria Drive. It is a portion of that property, as the portion on the south side of the railroad tracks of this address are not planned to be part of this development proposal. The area in yellow is identified as 71.23 acres, with approximately 48 of those acres being developable. And the site is bounded to the north by the proposed Rolling Hills development, which the council just approved preliminary plat for a couple of weeks ago. To the west by a vacant property owned by the Bovies. And then, as I mentioned, to the south by the current property owners and their farmstead on the south side of the railroad tracks. The proposal is currently for 28 single-family homes, 70 villa lots, and 110 townhomes, making a total of 208 lots. The area is primarily agricultural, with a mixture of rolling hills, some wooded areas, and wetlands, as well as the Chaska Creek that runs through the center of the property. And as I mentioned, it is adjacent to the Twin Cities and Western Railroad tracks on the southeast boundary. There will be a tree survey required, as there are some wooded areas, and I think there is some plans for some tree removal. So a tree analysis and survey will be required with any subsequent preliminary plat. This area is currently guided for low density, medium density, and institutional. You can kind of see the background in this area here for the different colors. Based on the proposal, the applicant is proposing approximately 31 acres in the area west of the creek for single family and villa homes, which comes out to 3.14 units per acre. And the 110 townhome units are proposed on approximately 15 acres, which yields 7 approximately units per acre. The institutional designation was put in place when the comp plan was done, as this at one point in time was envisioned for a potential water treatment facility. That facility is determined is no longer needed in this area, but staff believes that the inclusion of parks, wetland buffers, and those types of things constitute public or institutional use for this property, so would not recommend or think that a comp plan amendment would be needed for this proposal. As was included in your background packet, here is a sketch rendering of what the developer is proposing. We can come back to this as we get into discussion and look at things in more detail, but as you can see, here is the 110 townhome units positioned on the northeast portion of the site, with the single family and villa portion on the southwest portion. The applicant is proposing a planned unit development, so they are asking for some reduction in our current standard zoning for single-family residential. So I've included in your background packet and have included in this table some comparisons to some of the recently approved PUDs of similar products, including the Rolling Hills development to the south, and how the single-family and villa homes compare. Slightly larger in size being proposed, approximately the same lot width at 65, lot depth at 130, the 7.5 foot side yard setbacks, and then 25 front and rear yard setbacks. The townhomes, this table is for comparison, just showing some of the similar product that was approved last year as part of the Laketown 15th development. So as is typical with townhome developments, the size of those actual building units and the buildings varies, but we've got a slightly narrower product here, 25 feet each unit, 45 feet in depth of each unit with 20 feet in building separation. So just some comparisons to some of the comparable recently approved developments. As was noted in your background packet, staff has identified, and we've had some conversations with the fact that the development parcel is only accessible by one roadway from the north, and that providing a secondary access into that development is going to be a significant challenge until such time as development continues to the west. We had an opportunity to meet with the applicant last week after the Planning Commission meeting to talk about this and some other items. Chief Hager was part of that meeting to have some discussions. The public safety personnel also understands that there's very little viability to adding a second access until development comes in from the west, just based on the topography and the site barriers such as the railroad, creek, etc. And the developer has agreed to continue to work with the city to try and mitigate any potential concerns that could potentially limit access, especially in the area of the creek, including making sure that the roadway is above the 100-year floodplain, exploring offsetting utilities so that if there is a utility break, it would not necessitate blocking the entire road, and also exploring a possible farm road emergency access through the Welter property. So some of the things that we are continuing to discuss to try and mitigate any potential issues with the single access. Moving on to buffers and screening. So as I mentioned, there is a railroad track that bounds the southeast portion of this property, the entire length of the property. As currently proposed, there are several homes that are showing with their rear yards facing the railroad tracks. In the sketch plat, the applicant is proposing a berm and plantings that they indicate would screen approximately up to the first floor of the lots, approximately 16 through 27 in this area. So staff has noted some concern with the layout that results in several of those lots with rear yards facing the railroad tracks. As you may have seen in your background packet, the applicant's comments to those concerns have indicated that they believe that this is their ideal layout because there is minimal and slower traffic on the tracks. There's a desire more to abut railroad tracks than necessarily another lot. Speaking to the distance from the center of the tracks to the shortest building line, that the buffer berm and trail will provide adequate screening and that less impervious surface and grading would be required in this configuration. As I did note, we did have a representative from Twin Cities and Western Railroad that participated in the April 20th Planning Commission. Their comments were also included in your background packet, and just to highlight a few of those is they indicated that the rail line does see more than 3 trains per day, as a majority of their traffic is unscheduled agricultural traffic. He asked that the city strongly consider requiring a whistle-free crossing on Highway 11 as part of the Highway 11 improvements, that they've noticed that helps reduce complaints with railroad track noise and these types of developments. They expressed a desire to work with the developer on the proposed berm, specifically to ensure that it would not have any negative impacts on railroad operations with drainage and water. They did indicate a preference to see fencing installed to discourage any easy accessibility to those railroad tracks. There was a noted concern with the park location adjacent to the railroad tracks if it is not adequately fenced, And then they have also recommended and would like to make sure there are adequate disclosures about the railroad traffic for purchasers of any of these lots in the future. One other item related to buffers and screening, there is one area currently shown in the townhome area that would include some double fronted lots. So as always, staff is recommending that those areas include the 25-foot landscape buffer and required plantings as are required in double and triple fronted situations. Moving on to park, with the current number of units, the park dedication for this area comes out to approximately 6.11 acres of Parkland dedication required. The applicant is currently proposing a 2.5 acre park with a tot lot on the eastern portion of the single family area along the creek, with 5 on-street parking spots located around the corner and no parking within the park. They are also proposing approximately 1.63 acres of trail corridor, 30-foot trail corridor in this area that they would be seeking Parkland credit for, and that the remainder would be satisfied in Parkland dedication fees. So as was indicated in your background, some additional staff notes related to the park is that the comprehensive plan does call for a neighborhood park to serve both the development in this area as well as the proposed Rolling Hills development to the north. And as you may recall, with the preliminary plat approval of Rolling Hills, there was a 5.5 acre park, neighborhood park that was approved as part of that preliminary plat. With that in mind, and the number of homes and residences and people that would be part of both of these developments, as well as any expanded development to the west, staff, the Parks and Recreation Committee, and the Planning Commission all expressed a desire to see an additional 4 to 5 acre park within this development to supplement the 5 acre park to the north, and also that facility would include access and parking. The Planning Commission has also expressed some concerns with the proximity of the proposed park to the railroad tracks. Related to parks, trail and sidewalks, there is a required trail on one side of the collector roadway, which is depicted and proposed by the applicant. All trails on city right-of-way or in city outlots would be required to be 8 foot bituminous. Like the Rolling Hills development, staff is recommending that the applicant provide a financial contribution as part of the proposed 2022 Highway 11 roadway project that would include construction of the trail along Highway 11 as opposed to actually constructing that trail at this time prior to road work. Required 6 foot sidewalks are being depicted in the single family area, and 5 foot sidewalks are being showed in the proposed townhome area. And we'll talk a little bit about the roadway network in the townhome area in just a few slides. So moving on to transportation and right-of-way, staff is supportive of the collector roadway that is showing running through this development, an extension from the Rolling Hills development to the north that would include 70 feet of right-of-way and no driveway access. Staff is also supportive of the 60-foot right-of-way in the single-family area. Sorry, locked up there. All right. But there are some concerns with the townhome area roadways. So as was noted in your background packet, the applicant had originally proposed all private streets in this townhome area. And staff's policy is typically that if it functions like a public street, it looks like a public street, it probably should be a public street. So with that recommendation, the applicant has revised their sketch plat to include a 40-foot public right-of-way section for the townhome area. So it would be much narrower than our typical 60-foot section. And then instead of having any on-street parking, they are proposing some bump outs in these areas that would provide for some guest parking and potential snow storage. So as noted, staff does have some concerns with the impacts of that significantly reduced right-of-way, including snow removal, maintenance, the fit of utilities, trees, hydrants, etc. And as part of the Planning Commission meeting, we did have a little bit more in-depth discussion about whether or not these roadways should ultimately be public or private or some combination. The Planning Commission was fairly unanimous in that they agree with staff that there should be a public roadway network, and potentially that could include some private driveway stubs or fingers, but that the roadway network should be public. And if a public street is desired, if the city council agrees with that, staff is recommending taking a harder look at this and potentially asking for a reconfigured layout that would provide wider public right-of-way and a possible private finger drives off of that public right-of-way. As we discussed during the Rolling Hills preliminary plat, a well location is required in this area, and that well location is being shown and proposed just south of the lift station parcel that was part of the Rolling Hills preliminary plat. So we're seeing that in that same area. Like the Rolling Hills development, this development is also in the Carver County WMO jurisdiction, so they will need to adhere to all of their rules. And then one final additional piece of Planning Commission feedback is that even though this property is not directly adjacent to the Marsh Lake Hunt Club, there was a request to include similar disclosures related to the noise that the Hunt Club will generate. So with that, staff has a few recommendations that were included in your background packet as how things we'd like to see the developer take a look at, and some items for your discussion this evening, including making sure that an annexation petition is submitted with the preliminary plat, continuing to work to mitigate the single access concerns, continuing discussions related to site layouts and proximity to railroad tracks, and incorporating adequate buffers and barriers and potential fencing. A request to provide some cross-section renderings that show the distances, elevations, etc. of those proposed berms and how the houses relate to the railroad tracks, adhering to our buffer and screening requirements, providing additional parkland that includes on-site parking, and potentially consider a different location for that park farther from the railroad tracks. Continuing discussions related to the townhome area roadway, including a potentially different layout with a wider right-of-way, finalizing utility plans and stormwater plans, and then as well as all the typical preliminary plat submittals. So with that, council, I can't see, but I believe there are representatives of the development team that are in the audience as well, and I will turn it back to you for discussion and questions.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mr. Dahl. Council, I now thank you, Marty, for your presentation. Any comments from the developer? Please step forward, introduce yourself for the record.
Can I take this off?
Please.
Or speak?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear better.
Hear me a little
Yes,
bit better.
thank you.
Mayor, council members, my name's Matt Pavick with Golden Valley Land Company and Civil Site Group. And we have been working on this project for a couple of years. We appreciate an opportunity to get back here. It's getting to be real now because we have Rolling Hills project to the north that's going full steam ahead. So we're excited to be here tonight to talk about our project. So it fits in well, we think, with the Rolling Hills project to the north, is an extension of that project in terms of both kind of the diversity of the different housing styles and adding a townhome element into this area too, we think fits really nicely. We agree with all of the city staff recommendations. We're continuing to discuss with them the nuances of how we should tweak some designs. Our biggest concerns are how do we fit more parkland in here, and if that's necessary with the bigger park that's already adjacent to our site to the north. And we've been having those discussions. And then also the townhome design, how we get that to work. Because we had proposed a layout that works really well for what we're proposing in a private street situation. That's how it would be laid out. And if it were a private street, it would function just like it would if it was a public street. But there are different criteria when it becomes a public street in terms of right-of-way width. And so we're going to work with staff to try to customize that a little bit more for a townhome style project versus a single family where you have to have a wider right-of-way for different elements. So we're going to be continuing to work with staff to try to keep our design right, but fit into the box of the public street needs, so.
Very good.
Otherwise, I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, and again, we're looking forward to the feedback and proceeding.
Thank you. Councilmember Black.
Yes. I'm a little concerned about having one entrance exit for 208 lots. Don't we have some sort of ordinance that we have to have so many entrances and exits?
Ms. Hardy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Black, and maybe Marty might want to jump in here, but I think when we first presented this information here this evening, Marty did note that the fire chief did review this, and it is certainly, we're certainly working with the applicant to mitigate some of those concerns. But Marty, maybe you've got maybe some more details on those conversations.
Mayor, members of the council. So yeah, as I indicated in my presentation, this is a very challenging site to provide that secondary access into until development expands to the west. We've got the creek that causes some barrier. We've got the railroad tracks that obviously causes some barrier to the south. And then we've got some wetlands and things that limit what can happen on the eastern side here. So it is something that we've been aware of this entire time. We've been having discussions internally. Chief Hager is aware that it's going to be very difficult or challenging to provide that secondary access. As I mentioned in my presentation, I think the area of primary concern really is this area between the townhomes and the single family homes, because if you're able to get into this area, you've got multiple access points into the townhomes. If you're able to get past the creek area, you've got multiple accesses into the single family area. So what we're planning to do is try to continue to work with the developer to mitigate any potential issues that could happen here. Ensure there's not large trees in this area that can fall across the roadway. Potentially look at offsetting utilities. So if there's a water main break, you're not going to have to close off the entire street. Ensuring that the street is above the 100-year floodplain, so there's not any concerns with the Chaska Creek flooding. So and all of that, understanding that eventually this roadway is intended to connect out through these parcels, connect back into 10, ultimately connect into 43 on this collector road. That would provide that additional access. So it has been part of the discussion, and as I mentioned, Chief Hager has been part of those, and he, I think at this point in time, is comfortable working on those mitigation areas, just understanding the challenges of the site.
Okay.
Terrific.
With the creek, is it big? Is it deep? Do you need to make a bridge over it, or?
It's not very big. It's just going to be a culvert that'll go underneath, a 48-inch culvert that'll go underneath that roadway.
Okay. And then the other question was about the railroad. You said that you were working with them on that.
Yes, is that, sorry, Councilmember Black, is that question for me or is that for the development team?
Well, either one, whoever, because you said that you were working with them, and you said that you were great working with staff on this. Did you come to a conclusion as to what you could do?
Yeah, I mean, so what we're proposing right now is a berm that's 20 feet high. The train tracks are actually 20 feet below the top of the berm, and then the homes are walkouts and they're above that. So there's plenty of screening visually to the train. You probably won't even see it from those homes.
Okay.
The sound, again, with a natural vegetated berm, we think is the best sound barrier that you can have. So we would propose that, and then we're also, we looked at a lot of other developments that are along this same train corridor to compare the distance from those homes to the train track as to what we're proposing. And the vast majority of those were about 100 foot from back of house to center of track distance, and ours minimum is 145. We're averaging about 160 feet. So we're, 50% more distance than those other developments, which you think is, another good improvement. And then we also heard about a suggestion for some fencing there, which we think is a great idea if that's something that
Okay.
is recommended, so.
It sounded like you were pretty amiable with all the recommendations.
Yeah, because we agree. I mean, it's in everybody's best interest to make sure it's safe and screened and all those things. That's, we proposed, 90% of that, and so we just are kind of solidifying it now, but.
Okay.
Councilmember Black, anything else?
I just had a few things.
Yeah.
So first of all, I like that we have a diverse properties here, right? So one of the things I think the council wants is more diverse housing. So I like that we have lots of townhomes and these villa homes that give some different options for people in different stages of their life. Do you have price points yet on what these are, or you're not at that point yet?
We're working with a couple different builders in terms of what they're gonna do, but we don't have anything solid yet on that. But I would imagine it'll be very similar to what's going on to the north.
Sure. And then I agree with the the berm. I think is going to be great. I do agree with the fencing. I know you mentioned, I think, at the Planning Commission, chain link fence. Those are pretty easily crossed over by kids who want to go explore. So maybe something that's a little bit harder to climb over. The same with the park. I know this was talked about at the Planning Commission, right? The park, I think, is a little close, but if you have the berm that extends, I think you talked that it is going to extend that way, and then if you have a fence maybe in that area too, that kind of mitigates some of that risk. With the whistle-free crossing, sounded like it could be upwards of $500,000. So is that something that you as the developer would work with, or like how? I guess I don't know, how does that work at all? Is the city involved?
I mean, we don't have that budgeted.
Sure.
We would think it would be more of a regional effort for something like that, and we haven't really had any discussions beyond just hearing that suggestion at the Planning Commission meeting. So we would definitely want to talk about it because, again, it could be if they're already redoing the road and it's part of an upgrade to that crossing that they're planning on doing anyway, we would support that. But
I know, I don't know much about whistle-free crossings, but I do know there's a bunch of stuff a bunch of requirements that have to be met in order to have a whistle-free crossing, and it's a high hurdle, as it should be, but it's a high hurdle. And as much as we'd love that, I don't know that it's possible.
Is there liability then, even if we cross all those and get above all those high hurdles for a whistle-free crossing for a city that, say, it does fail and there's an accident? So what happens if we make that decision legally?
Yeah, so Mayor and Council, I'm interested in this issue too, because like the mayor and maybe council member, in cities that have developments close to these kind of crossings, the whistles are not quiet. And you do hear from folks that live near these things that it becomes a nuisance to them. No is the answer. That there isn't going to be liability for a city not either imposing on this developer the requirement to make this happen as a condition of development or to sort of otherwise work with the rail company to make it happen. Obviously, the city has a role. I mean, the city would have a role in seeking that, whether it's just financial or not financial, it's just support for the concept. But there isn't liability. I mean, this is always a hot issue in cities as development occurs, and it's just a public policy question. Is it important to the city and to the residents to pursue it? But no, there's not liability. And of course, the reason that the rail company representative is suggesting it is a liability issue potentially for the rail company. And they're going to care about it, and they're extremely well practiced in dealing with this issue. Obviously, they deal with this issue across the country and have done it thousands of times. So, but it's a real issue. So,
It sounded like from the Planning Commission that there's a development in Chaska that they did do the whistle-free crossing, but then there's another that did not, and there's lots of complaints about not having one there. And then it sounded like the railroad has concerns about drainage, and I assume that you guys will be working more closely with them to appease any concerns for.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So we already have a schematic grading plan where we don't even impact their drainage ditches. Okay. Yeah, we're good there.
And then the final question is so I'm in a neighborhood, the Woodlands, that we're close to Garden Path. They are private roads, or at least it says that they're private roads, I guess. Marty, do you know what the width of their streets are? I'm just curious if it, just for reference sake, like if it's.
Yeah, Councilmember Roberts, mayor's member of the council. I'm not sure what those specific widths are in some of those private roadway scenarios. I don't know. As Kara doesn't happen to be with us this evening, does she?
She is not.
Okay. No, I unfortunately I don't know what those widths are.
Okay. Oh, thank you. And they do have the setback or the bump in parking spots as well. Those are nice because then you don't have the street parking. I assume would there be no parking signs then in the neighborhood? Okay.
Yeah, we would propose no parking on any of the streets because we have adequate parking in the driveways and then also in the guest parking spots.
And from a fire truck's, trying to get through there, are they comfortable with the 40-foot as long as there's no on-street parking?
Yeah, the key there again is the 24-foot is the fire lane.
Yep.
So that's plenty wide for a fire truck, and we can, again, work with staff to kind of show those truck movements through there, but it's not uncommon. It's a very.
Yeah, Councilmember Roberts, mayor, member of the council, if I can jump in, I don't think staff is necessarily concerned with the actual street width itself. Again, supposing that this will be signed with no parking and we are not going to have parking issues where that becomes a problem with people parking where they're not supposed to be. It's more so, I think, related to snow storage. The reduced right-of-way takes some of that ability away. Just the fit, right? So does everything that we require in the public right-of-way fit in there? And those are pieces that we're also doing some work on internally to see if this concept would be viable from that perspective as well.
I know in the Garden Path neighborhood, they tend to do, their snow removal gets put into those, because into those parking areas, which obviously then you lose parking, but you probably don't see as much, travel through there during the winter as much, so. Right, that's all I had.
Yeah, a lot of them go south or west for the winter.
Very good.
I had
Councilmember Hebert.
some questions on the railroad disclosures. I know they talked about the planning commission, the hazardous material being ethanol. Traveling there frequently, at one point in time, it was the most hazardous material moved across railroads. So is there any disclosures on that would be made available?
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to disclose that. I don't know if there's a standard disclosure for something like that would go out as a part of a normal real estate transaction. But, I'm of the opinion, the more disclosures, the better. There's no reason to ever not disclose something. So if there is a way to have, disclosures that talk about the gun club and the railroad track and the things that the railroad track may be carrying, we'd be totally open to that if that's suggested or recommended.
And I think also from the planning commission, parking, I believe in the single family and the villa area, you had, I forget the term, but you had different spots laid out for parking. And I thought the request was a study in terms of where to strategically place those. And so I didn't hear that brought up, but unless I missed it, but that's gonna.
Yes, so right now in our sketch plan phase, we showed a half a space per unit. So there's about 50 off-street parking spots. And we just kind of lumped them in there for this phase. We didn't get super detailed on it, but the suggestion is rather than having 10 of them in a row, maybe you have 2 here and 3 here and 2 here. So people don't have to walk so far to get to the guest spaces, which is great. And yeah, we would do that as part of the next more detailed design.
And then the other thing I had was, I know there was talk about the park and the tot lot, which I don't think that's something that the city really is super excited about, is another tot lot. And I know there was questions about additional parkland and then that area to the north and I guess to the west, the wooded area as well. I don't think, unless I missed it, was there a decision, a recommendation made on what is going to go in there? if that's gonna be city-owned, I think it was a question, is it city-owned or privately owned? Or owned by the HOA?
Yeah, we heard feedback that, from the Parks Department, or the Parks Committee, and the Planning Commission, was that there's a wooded area there that we had kind of suggested as a public park, kind of passive use space. And the suggestion was the city maybe did not want that they'd prefer that to be privately held by the HOA. And that was the recommendation. And then also for the tot lot, we were thinking of it more as just a smaller neighborhood park with a tot lot on it, but not that the whole thing is just a tot lot and that doesn't serve any other function. Because we do have, it's 2.5 acres, so we have room there for a large play field as well. But we did think that a playground was appropriate to have on the park, but. What's that?
Marty?
Because of all the little kids.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the council. So just to kind of restate what the Parks and Recreation Committee had noted, they did not necessarily comment on the location of the park, where the Planning Commission did note some concerns potentially with the location of the park. But both groups seem to agree that there should be a little more parkland provided, specifically that there should be some on-site parking, as well as vehicle access in the park area wherever that ends up being. So just wanted to reiterate those recommendations from those two groups.
Thank you. Councilmember Hebert, anything else? Councilmember Gunderson, anything from you?
Yeah. I don't like where the park is. I think it's an afterthought in this particular area. I've been looking at, I hear the word tot lots, and to Councilmember Hebert's point, the city's not involved. I don't have an appetite for another tot lot because they try to turn them over to us after the association gets tired of dealing with them. And once the neighborhood ages out and turns over, maybe they get a little bit of use here and there, but we're already dealing with some of those being turned back over. And our answer has been no for the most part. Am I right? So to avoid having to say no in the future, maybe just to come up with a better concept of where that park can be located. And I've been looking at this with the other plat up above. I keep thinking, why can't the parks be somehow joined together where they become a larger amenity-related park? And to that end, we've talked about pickleball courts. We've talked about a whole bunch of other amenities. But that to me would make the highest and best use of the community related things. I just don't like the way that park is. And we have Madeline Creek where we have problems with on-street parking, snow removal with narrower streets to the point where we've shown, are they always that wide, especially at Whispering Hills? Again, to me, that becomes either a safety and a snow removal issue. I know that they're wide enough to get fire engines in there, but no parking signs don't really work unless you've got somebody who's really policing them within the neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that has no parking signs. It's mostly for the mail, but they don't work. I mean, every other day you've got somebody parking over there and it's, to me, it's whatever. I mean, we can get in and out just fine, but these are seem to be much narrower than my neighborhood streets. So we're shoehorning things in again. We've also got 7.5-foot side yard setbacks. We seem to be making that a slippery slope. I don't mean to be banging on you, but just kind of getting increased. We seem to be trying to cram a whole lot of what our wish list is on housing mix and trying to keep a park and narrower streets with narrower side yard setbacks all into these all-in-one developments that I don't think that's the purpose of our housing mix or the want, at least the way I understand it. So if there's a way that we can create a better use park and somehow create a better, I understand the way that the land is laid out. it makes for an interesting, it's not, it's not a perfect square, it's not a perfect rectangle. It looks like New Jersey. I understand the difficulty there, but something that would give it, because now we've also got a trail that kind of just starts on the west side, curls around and ends at the park. How does that connect with our broader city trail? And how do we connect that into what we're trying to connect the city with our broader, with our other trails and our long-term plan? So those are my questions, and how we keep this connected to the city and make this a much more functional space, not only for the residents there, but for the other residents around the community.
One on your point on the trails, am I correct? There's no trail from the townhomes to the park, right? So, and if there's no parking there, are people gonna walk that street then?
Councilmember Roberts, mayor, member of the council, there would be a 8-foot trail on one side and sidewalk on the other of the collector roadway. But from the collector roadway, then it would be sidewalk, not trail.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Gunderson, anything else?
Nope.
Council? My colleagues covered it all well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty, I think you have what you need from council tonight. You're not looking for anything additional, correct?
No, thank you for the feedback.
Very good. Thank you. And
you.
thank you, Mr. Pavic. Next on the agenda is item 6.2, Laketown 17th Edition Final Plat. Again, Mr. Dahl, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I'm pulling up my next presentation. Give me one moment here. All right, are you seeing my screen?
We are.
Excellent. So yes, mayor, members of the council, this item is for the Laketown 17th edition final plat. The applicant is Lennar, who has been working on the Laketown development for several years. Just a little bit of background on this plat specifically, as it's a little bit unique. So a portion of this final plat was actually preliminary platted as part of Laketown 11th back in 2018. And then a year later, in October of 2019, the city council approved a preliminary plat for the Marsh Point development, which is adjacent to the Laketown area of this. So two separate preliminary plat approvals of these two different developments. In early 2021, Lennar actually acquired the Marsh Point property and have proposed this Laketown 17th edition as a combination of both of those preliminary plats. So here you can kind of see the outline of where those two areas are. The Laketown 11th preliminary plat area is here, and the Marsh Point preliminary plat area is here. Both are coming forward as a final plat as Laketown 17th. This is located west and south of the existing Laketown neighborhoods. It's bounded on the north by city-owned wetlands and some stormwater ponds, and then to the south from some rural residential and agricultural piece. The site itself is 8.22 acres, approximately 4.99 of those are developable, and the applicant is proposing 16 single-family lots. As I mentioned, there's primarily vacant land. A portion of this, the Laketown portion, has already been previously graded with preliminary approvals from earlier developments, and there are some wooded areas. The comp plan guides this area for low density residential, and the applicant is proposing to meet that range with 3.2 units per acre. Here you can see, and was also included in your background packet, the roadway makeup and the lot configuration for the 16 lots being proposed. This one, another unique situation, is as this was preliminary platted under the city's former R2 single family zoning district, which is a district that is no longer in existence for new development. This development is grandfathered in under those standards. So this is coming forward as a straight zoning proposal under the former R2 single family zoning standards, which are noted below. But as I've also noted on the slide, you'll see the lots are actually quite a bit larger than what that minimum lot area requirement is for R2, ranging from 9,600 to lot 18,000 square feet and in between. So they are proposing larger lots than just the minimum requirement for R2. Parkland Dedication has already been satisfied for the Laketown portion of this development with their previous dedications. However, the Marsh Point portion, approximately 9 homes, is subject to Parkland Dedication, and the applicant is proposing to satisfy that with fees of approximately $41,000. There was a tree survey included. The applicant is proposing to remove about 124 caliper inches of significant trees, which is 22% of the significant trees on the parcel. Per our ordinance, the calculation comes out to 0.5 caliper inches in replacement required for every inch removed, and the developer is planning to satisfy that requirement of 62 caliper inches of replacement trees. The applicant or the proposal includes 6-foot wide concrete sidewalks on the north side of Timber Terrace. It also includes an extension of the 8-foot bituminous trail along Red Fox as Red Fox is expanded to the property line. Access to this development is provided through an extension of Timber Terrace. Timber Terrace will loop and eventually reconnect with Red Fox Drive at the point in time when the property to the south develops. Red Fox Drive is also planning to be extended to the southwest below this development. As was noted in your background packet, staff is requesting that the applicant seek any necessary easements from that adjacent property owner in an attempt to extend the roadway and utilities all the way to the property line. And we are suggesting that if that's unable to be achieved, that notice be provided to the city as part of the conditions that the owner denied the easement, and regardless, sufficient right-of-way is being retained to make those connections in the future. Sanitary sewer and water is available to serve the development. There's one stormwater pond being proposed in the southwest portion of the site, and adequate access has been provided, and all requirements of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District are to be met. So with that, staff is generally supportive of this final plat application and is recommending approval with the following conditions: that the development adhere to the R2 single family zoning regulations, as typical with all final plats, that their final construction plans must be approved by the city. Development agreement must be entered into and all applicable fees paid, that the final plat and documents be recorded within 121 days, that an attempt may be made to acquire those easements to extend streets, and if not, a written notice of the adjacent property owner's refusal to grant that easement, complying with the city attorney's plat opinion, and submitting and recording all HOA documents and covenants. And with that, Mayor, members of the council, I will turn it back to you for discussion. I believe Paul Tabone with Lennar is also joining us virtually if you have any questions for him.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Council, discussion.
Pretty good. Did, Paul, this is Judy Black. Were you able to seek the easements from the residents, or have you done that yet?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can, thank you.
Perfect. We have approached the property owners about the easements, and we are kind of in talks with them to see if we can work something out at this point.
Good.
So I just met with them last Monday, and I will continue to keep staff updated if we should move forward with easements or any land purchases, acquisitions, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Thanks. Council? All right, seeing no discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt resolution approving the final plat of Laketown 17th edition with conditions as listed in the resolution.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Thank you, Mr. Tabone. You're on your way.
Thank you. Do appreciate your support this evening.
Thank you.
The last item under the regular agenda is 6.3, a public hearing for the vacation of park designation on a portion of South Lake Virginia Shores Park and Minor Subdivision and Reassembly of 6735 and 6745 Smithtown Road. Marty, I thought you were off the hook, but you are presenting one more time this evening.
I am. It's the hat trick for tonight.
There you go.
Give me a moment here. I'll share my screen. So yes, Mayor, members of the council, we have a few different action items that are before you for consideration tonight, all related to a minor subdivision of a city-owned parcel with part of the adjacent park property, and then reassembly, and we'll kind of talk through that here as part of the presentation. So just a little bit of background again. So last May, the council had requested staff explore selling 4 city-owned vacant lots. Staff began that work last spring, gathering additional information, getting some public feedback on those, etc. In addition, on May 18th, the Parks and Recreation Committee of last year, the Parks and Recreation Committee was brought this item for the lot that is before you this evening to ask for their opinion on whether a portion of the park should be used to create a residential lot in this area. And they did recommend that a minor subdivision take place to complete that Smithtown lot. So last June, all of that information was brought back to the council, and at that point in time, the council directed us to work on selling 3 of those 4 lots, with one of them being held on to for the time being. The 2 of those lots have already sold in early 2021, and we're here tonight to discuss that 3rd lot. On August 3rd, as you'll recall, the council approved a brokerage services agreement with Synergy Land Company, who is assisting us in the sale of these properties. And then on April 20th of this year, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for the items that are before you this evening. There were no attendees, and they did recommend the vacation and minor subdivision on a 6-1 vote. So the item before you is related to 6735 Smithtown lot. It is the small square lot you can see on your screen here. The other property, 6745 Smithtown Road, is the park property that surrounds it on 2 sides. And in order for this lot to become a residential buildable lot, it does require a minor subdivision and reassembly with a portion of the park, as we've discussed. The reason that is necessary is the lot as it stands as itself would not be able to meet the setbacks of both R1 and Shoreland District standards. So as I noted, there are 3 components to this process, and I'll walk through those here in a minute. The first is a repealing of ordinance number 123. This ordinance was adopted in May of 1985, and it specifically designated South Lake Virginia Shores as a neighborhood park playground. And in consultation with City Attorney Vos, he noted that that is not typically how parks are established. They're not established by ordinance, but because this ordinance is in place, it does require a repeal in order to move forward with the minor subdivision. The second piece, and more typical of what the city would be asked to do in a situation like this, is to adopt a resolution that vacates a portion of this public property from park use. So that is the second piece that would be required, is that a portion of the park be vacated in order to be able to be subdivided and reassembled with the adjacent lot. And you can see the area of the park that is proposed for vacation highlighted in yellow. The remainder of the park would continue to be under a park designation. And then lastly is the actual minor subdivision and reassembly. So as I noted, we needed to put together some additional property in order to make a buildable lot. And so you can see the lot regulations that would be in place with this lot if approved above, and how those compare to the minimum R1 and shoreland lot regulations. And you can see it is meeting all of those minimum requirements for a lot. As was noted in your background packet, we did work with WSB to do some of the preliminary engineering to just determine some feasibility to make sure that there actually could be a house built on these lots based on some of the grades. So they have provided some grading plans. They've also provided some engineers' estimates as to the work that would need to take place. That would be the buyer's responsibility to take care of. As part of the work that they did. And they provided us with two potential options. The city does not necessarily need to concern itself with these two options at this point in time, other than to know that there is an ability to meet setbacks and to grade the property to both be accessible either from Smithtown Road or from Virginia Shores Circle. And the reason that is important is that there is a Met Council sewer easement that cuts across the park and does come into a portion of what will become this new residential lot. And as you can see from the concept grading, access off of Smithtown Road would likely require a retaining wall be built across that easement. The city, just as some of its due diligence, did reach out to the Met Council. There is an ability for people to ask for that type of construction and be granted that type of work in a Met Council easement. But we wanted to ensure that if an easement wasn't possible in that area, that there was an ability to still build a home with access off of the other adjacent roadway. So hence why we have two different concepts. As I mentioned, the WSB also included some engineers' estimates that will help us determine what the list price should be for this lot. That would include earthwork, utilities, street work, retaining walls, and tree clearing. For option 1 or access off of Smithtown Road, that would be $58,500. And option 2, the estimate is $47,800. Again, just to clarify, these would not be city costs. These would be borne by the future purchaser of this lot, but we did want to have that information to help us better price the lot, knowing what work would need to go into it. As I mentioned, we did receive public feedback on this item. So last May in 2020, we sent out a survey to property owners within 350 feet that asked some questions related to this project. For this specific parcel, there were 18 property owners. We received one response to that with concerns about giving away designated parkland. And then earlier this year in April, with the public hearing notice, we did get a phone call from the property owner adjacent to the park on the southeast side, who did express some displeasure that the property would no longer be adjacent to park and had concerns about the impact on their property value. And then finally, Planning Commission feedback and questions. There were some questions about the proposed sale price of this lot. Staff indicated at that time that preliminarily, when we talked about this last year, we thought there was potential this could be priced in the $200,000 range, but we have not yet determined that with our brokerage service firm that we're working with. That will be the next step. There were questions about the original plan for the park. This was part of last year's Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. That this area was not noted as a priority location for programming, that the intention, they believe, was always to just be open space, and ultimately led to their recommendation saying that that piece of the park was not necessary. There was a question about an HOA. There is no HOA in this development. There was a question about the city's cost to this point, about what was spent to prepare lots for sale. And so it was noted that the council had authorized up to $20,000 for the work needed to prepare all 3 of these lots. And then there was also a question about the city's position if this lot does not sell. Staff indicated that as with the other lots, our intention would be to try to price them to sell, and if they are on the market for some time, look at reducing those, because we really do want to maximize our return, but we also don't want to hang on to these for ever. And that if they were to be held onto after subdivision, there would likely be an annual property tax payment that the city would be responsible for. In addition to the potential consideration of these 3 actions, staff is looking for some feedback. You do not necessarily need to vote or take a motion on this, but is looking for some feedback and a consensus on the allocation of the funds for this property once it is sold. As you may recall, the previous 2 lot sale proceeds were placed in the Senior Affordable Housing Fund. The Parks and Recreation Committee did recommend that proceeds from this parcel be placed into the Park Fund, as it is taking a portion of park property. So staff has identified a couple of options, and again, the council may have some other ideas, but potentially placing the full proceeds into the Parks Fund, the full proceeds into the Senior Affordable Housing Fund, or splitting those proceeds evenly between both funds. And so with that, Mayor, members of the council, based on the direction that we've received from City Council dating back to last year, staff is recommending repealing ordinance number 123, designating South Lake Virginia Shores as a neighborhood park playground, vacating the portion of South Lake Virginia Shores Park as depicted, and approving the minor subdivision and reassembly of the 2 parcels, as well as seeking a recommendation as to where you would like to see the proceeds allocated. And with that, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Marty. Council, questions, comments?
I have a question. Why,
Member Black.
why would we do this prior to selling the property? Why wouldn't we do it as after we have a buyer? Because if we don't have a buyer, then we're going to end up paying property tax.
Councilmember Black, Mayor, members of the council, if we were to sell the property as is, as currently in its current form, it would not be a buildable lot by our zoning standards. So in order to be able to have a marketable lot, we needed to do the minor subdivision and reassembly. Otherwise, we would not have a valid buildable lot.
So you're thinking about $200,000 for this lot plus $50,000 to $60,000 just to prep it so that you can build on there. So we're talking $250,000 to $260,000 for a piece of land before you even build a house. Does that sound like something that's possible?
And Councilmember Black, those were very preliminary numbers when we discussed that last year. So as I indicated, we have not, in fact, I'm meeting with our brokerage folks on Thursday, if this item is approved, to start discussing what that actual market price would be.
Councilmember Black, anything else?
Yeah, I'll wait.
Okay.
Next.
Council, any other comments, questions?
The neighbor,
Yeah.
just, I mean, how likely is it going to be that it's going to cause issues that we do this? I mean, beyond their letter of concern back, any issue? I mean, they, from what I understand, they feel like their property is going to be devalued by adding this?
Yeah, Councilmember Gunderson, Mayor, members of the council, it seemed, and again, I'm gleaning this off of one conversation, but it seemed that their primary concern or question was if they are able to lower their taxable value because of this. You know, in a sense that they'd be seeking to do that because they believe their property would be worth less and be able to reduce their taxes. So we are certainly willing to help them, get them in touch with the right people at the county that would work with that if that's something that they'd want to do. But outside of that, I guess I can't speak to any additional issues or concerns or impacts.
So his concern was his tax being lowered?
That was what I gleaned from that. Yes, is that he expressed displeasure that it wasn't going to be a park, and that he purchased his property because it would be adjacent to parkland. But if it was no longer going to be parkland, would he be able to reduce his assessed value to lower his property tax payments?
I think that's going to depend on if somebody builds a house on a $260,000 lot.
Well, that's, I mean, the question that he has, or the issue that he has, is a county issue, not a city issue.
Right.
So, I mean, that's, okay.
All right. Council, other questions, comments? All right, with that, if I see no more discussion, we've got 3 separate motions in front of us. So, council, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to repeal ordinance number 123 designating Outlot A of South Lake Virginia Shores as a neighborhood park playground.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain another motion.
Motion to approve the resolution vacating the portion of South Lake Virginia Shores Park as depicted from park designation.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Mayor, if I
What?
may, just on that point, so in order to vacate land, the city has to hold a hearing, and your city manager is noting that there was a mention of a public hearing on the agenda item, but maybe I can just confirm with Marty. Marty, the public hearing we concluded was properly conducted in front of the Planning Commission, and there isn't a need for a public hearing tonight. Is that correct?
City Attorney Vos, there was a legally noticed public hearing, including notification of the 350-foot area around the subject property at the Planning Commission on April 20th, correct?
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Just wanted to note that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. And the final motion.
Motion to approve minor subdivision and reassembly as depicted for city-owned property at 6735 and 6745 Smithtown Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Terrific. Next item on the agenda is the round table.
Mayor?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just a note, is there any recommendation on the allocation of proceeds?
Oh, thank you for calling us back to that. Thank you. So we had originally, when we brought these 3 properties forward, the council at that time had suggested we start a senior affordable housing fund and use the proceeds from these lots into that fund. Because the Park and Rec is sacrificing some of their land for the benefit of this, they are suggesting that that the money should go in there. I personally see both sides of that, so I'm in favor of splitting it equally between both funds. Council, other suggestions?
I have, I would offer a 75 to the housing and 25 to parks only because I have other ideas of how we may be able to raise funds for parks that'll come up at other meetings throughout the course of the year. And I think the Parks Commission will even like. And so I think right now the bigger priority is finding homes for the seniors that live in Victoria. And so increasing the percentage towards the senior affordable housing and putting 25% to the parks, I think is reasonable. That's where I'm.
We got a 50-50, we got a 75-25. Anybody want to draw consensus from either one of those? Or bring up another option altogether?
I mean, I think the 50-50 is fair. Obviously not knowing the ideas Derek has coming down the road, but they have got big plans and right. We keep hearing about pickleball courts and stuff, so they can always use money towards that. But there could be other private options for that type of stuff too. So
Yeah.
Councilmember Black?
I'm kind of okay with the 50-50 as well.
Is this something that, if we say 50-50 or 75-25, we can't adjust at a later date? Or is it like,
And that's like
Yeah, we can adjust at a later date.
yeah.
Yes, we can adjust at a later date. So go ahead.
I would be in the 50-50 camp with the understanding that if we do have a pressing need and it is concrete and we need those funds, just adjust as needed.
Beautifully articulated. All right, staff, good to go with that?
Thank you.
Marty, I think you are now dismissed.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, next item on the agenda is the roundtable. This is a way for council members to see if we can get any consensus from fellow members on items they would like staff to explore. So, Ms. Hardy, anything from you for the roundtable?
Nothing from staff, Madam Mayor.
All right, council members, anything for the roundtable? Seeing none, we will,
just-
oh, go
I
ahead.
don't know if this should be roundtable or report. Are we still blending?
Oh, it's brand new. Yep.
Oh,
Merging. We just changed that.
okay.
Oh, okay,
So if you have anything to say at all for anything,
Okay.
this
I
is where to
just-
do it.
I just wanted an update on the yard waste date. Do we have one yet?
It was Councilmember Black, Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to look right now. It was posted on our social media recently and on our website, and I will take a look and see what I can find.
Okay, we will get back to you. And in the meantime, then I'm going to circle back to Attorney Vos and see if he has anything he wants
I
to
don't,
report.
Mayor, thank you.
All right, very good. So we have no reports, we have no roundtable items. We're waiting for Dana to tell us when the composting site is open for spring cleaning.
Yeah, it is.
Alyssa saves me. All right. Thank you, Alyssa.
Where did
Looks
she
like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the weekends of May 7, 14, 21, and 28. And it will be at our old Public Works facility just down the road. I'm not immediately seeing the time, but generally, we are not doing any event, so that space is open, so probably safest to do it during the daylight hours.
Yes.
Okay,
And additional information on our website, should you need it.
That is correct.
I didn't see it on social media, though.
All right. Okay, well,
Okay.
all right, very good. Seeing no other items to be brought before, oh, I'm sorry,
I was-
Councilmember Gunderson.
Yeah, I just have a couple of things. Next week is Teacher Appreciation Week, I believe, and we're going to miss it. It falls between our meetings, but I know other communities may be putting out proclamations regarding teacher support, school district support, and things like that. I would urge us to maybe consider that at a meeting in May to just kind of formally recognize the hard work that the district and the staff, administration, teachers do and have done throughout the extraordinary year and a half we've had. So that would be something I'd like to see considered. But one thing that you all know is really near and dear to me is mental health, and May is Mental Health Month. So I would like consensus to create a proclamation recognizing that May is Mental Health Month in the city of Victoria. And I don't have a particular ribbon or anything that anybody can wear, so wear whatever's near and dear to you. But if we could do that as a council at our first meeting in May, I would really appreciate it.
Consensus on that, so shaking and nodding of the heads. All right, last call. Anything else? Very good. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Mr. Benton.